Thank you. I think the discussion was largely prompted by the president's nomination to cabinet, especially of Dr. Lawrence Muganga, who, from the record even online, there are so many publications about him, holds Canadian citizenship. And I think he has gone on record to confirm the same. So the question was, can he, if he does happen to hold Ugandan citizenship, which it appears he holds, it means he's a dual citizen. So the question became whether he can lawfully be in cabinet. And I've seen, of course, online a number of other people being sucked into this debate, but I think that's a bit diversionary. As far as I can tell from some of them, they just hold Ugandan citizenship. But what probably people need to understand is, first of all, it's not illegal, it's not against the law for anyone who has Ugandan citizenship to also have citizenship of one other country. That's permitted. But there is a framework within which that happens. And then two, Uganda as it stands does not accept multiple citizenships. And so, for example, if the claims regarding Dr. Muganga correct that he has Rwandese, then plus Canadian, then plus Ugandan, now that one poses more complicated issues. Because now that's multiple citizenship, not dual. But that having been said, there has to be some kind of background to this kind of issue. In 1995, when this debate first happened, the majority view then was that Uganda should not accept dual citizenship at all. And so under the 1995 constitution, the way it was passed by the Constituent Assembly, it didn't permit dual citizenship. But then with the passage of time, and even globally, many countries have relaxed the outright prohibition against dual citizenship. Even in Europe, I think at some point, even countries like Spain never used to allow dual citizenship. There are some countries which traditionally have always been permissive or lax about dual citizenship or even multiple citizenship. Up to this day, I think countries like the United States don't bother about multiple citizenship. However, this has partly been caused by, this global, this concept of multiculturalism, where you have people who have left Uganda, they go to live in Australia, they get families in Australia, and then they have children who are born in Australia, but later some of them would end up needing their Ugandan citizenship, because some countries are actually a bit strict that you can be born here and be a permanent resident, but we shall not give you our citizenship. So you'd find some people needing to claim home citizenship. But then later on, some of them along the way, although they were living in Europe, somewhere in North America, in Canada, in the United States, sometimes the east or west home is best. So you find someone towards retirement, they decide they want to come back to Uganda, and then they realize that they're actually foreigners for purposes of Ugandan law, yet Uganda is the country they call home. So that realization over the years, over the past 20 years, almost 30 years, it forced a debate about whether the constitution needed to maintain the ban on dual citizenship. So in 2009, when a raft of amendments were being considered, of course, the most popular amendment, which caused all of these other changes to happen, was done for removal of term limits from the constitution. Under the 1995 constitution, a president could only serve 2 terms. That meant that in the year 2001, President Museveni was serving his last term. And for him to be eligible to contest for the next term, which began in 2006, the constitution was a bar. So in 2005, that very popular constitutional amendment was being considered. But there was a constitutional review commission chaired by Professor Sempebwa, which was in place, and it considered changes, a raft of changes. While that may have been the only targeted term limits, but they did a real exercise considering several other aspects in the constitution. And at the end of the day, the constitutional amendment bill of 2005 didn't just amend the constitution to remove term limits, it also removed the ban on dual citizenship. And the the debate was so heated because many people felt that it was still premature. But at the end of the day, the compromise was, okay, if people have dual citizenship, let Parliament pass a law to prescribe which offices they may not be eligible to occupy. The basis of that was that, you know, if a person has dual citizenship, they have divided loyalty. They may be loyal to this country and then betray the interests of the other country. That is the sentiment which people had. And because of that, a leeway was given to Parliament to later on pass a law that would prescribe which offices people who have dual citizenship are not eligible to serve in. And so, in 2009, Parliament made amendments to the Uganda Citizenship and Immigration Control Act. And that is how they enacted a provision. Right now it is section 23 in the Uganda Citizenship and Immigration Control Act, chapter 313, Laws of Uganda. It's now section 23, which prescribed in schedule 5 a number of offices which a dual citizen cannot hold. And therefore that gives the background to the current debate about whether Dr. Lawrence, for example, is Lawrence his other name? Muganga. Whether he can serve, moreover, as Minister of Internal Affairs, which, by the way, is the line ministry for Citizenship and Immigration Control Board. So he's technically actually supposed to be a supervisor of immigration. And that's why it's a bit delicate. And but the question is, number one, does his nomination, can he be appointed minister without anything being changed in the law? It is obvious to me that the answer is no. But what is missing in this debate is that actually the law authorizes Parliament to amend the fifth schedule by a resolution. What that means is that Parliament could actually decide tomorrow to sit and amend Schedule 5 and say we have removed cabinet ministers. They could, hypothetically, they could do so.
All right.
If they chose
Before I go to Tumukunde, do you think that the decision by Parliament then is right based on the fears they had? Because I have read somewhere that President Museveni himself was also, you know, a little bit hesitant and was saying, if this person has a citizenship of the other country and then they are in charge of this particular area, won't they be giving this information to the other country? Do you think it was right, or somehow we are denying ourselves talent? Because some people have been saying we need to tap talent. If there are Ugandans out there and they can provide good leadership, why not allow them to serve in this office?
Yeah, I think there is a good policy argument in favor of relaxing the prohibition on which offices a dual citizen can occupy. I think there is a good argument, and maybe when you also read the offices which had been listed by Parliament, President, I'm sure we can't have debate that the president surely should have an influence of only one country. Many countries do have such a requirement anyway. Even the United States, which is one of the most liberal in those sorts of issues, requires that a president should be a citizen by birth and born on American territory. But ministers.
What's all these offices in the fifth?
When we talk about ministers and cabinet ministers and other ministers, depending, of course, yes, a minister sits in the cabinet.
Those are chief advisors of the president.
Yes. But the president can even have non-Ugandans as advisors, and he likely has. I don't think. Probably we can have a good debate about whether ministers can be expatriates, can be non-Ugandans. When you see things like Inspector General, Deputy Inspector General of Government, these are like, you say an Inspector General is like an audit fund. He's an auditor, really. But when you look at technical head of the armed forces, of course, there it makes sense that you have someone.
This limitation is about the sensitive information that particular person can come across while in that office, not so.
But you see, I think that standard has to be different.
Okay.
Also because when you look at dual citizens, you see the way we approach the whole concept of dual citizens. We are assuming that if I'm holding American and Ugandan citizenship, I'm an influential person in the United States, that if I'm serving in Uganda, I'll look after the interests of the United States. But it may be that I'm actually a nobody in the United States.
You see,
and I consider myself Ugandan.
Presidents, the Chinese have been sending their people to America even to study, but some of them have ended up becoming American citizens and even joining sensitive offices, and they have been caught spying.
I think China is a bit different because for them it does look more like state policy anyway. A bit of like infiltration of Western society. I mean, that's how China has also tried to advance. They pick knowledge and technology from the West and then take it to develop themselves. Yes, it can happen. And but you see, if it happens, it's a crime of espionage. That's why you see, I maybe you're even alluding to, there is the case of one of those mayors in California who was just charged and pleaded guilty to espionage because she had Chinese citizenship as well, and was speaking information for the CCP, the Communist Party in China. But you see, the crime of espionage exists for that very reason.
All right.
Even a citizen who does not have dual citizenship can actually indulge in espionage.
All right. Our laws, the constitution of this country.
Kenneth and our listeners, you would agree with me that the making of the 1995 Constitution was to protect the aspirations of the Bush War generals that fought then at a high end. You would agree with me that right after the war, you had very pertinent people that even shared power in this government after 1996, to the extent that some of them were deputy defense ministers but were not born Ugandan. These were Rwandese, the likes of the current president of Rwanda, the likes of Fred Rijema. So one would ask, in the making of the 1995 Constitution, what were the fears? Because when you're making a document, there is a mischief and there is a fear. The fears were that some of the people that were even sponsoring the war were outside this country. And some of them, because of social and economic factors, had acquired dual citizenship of other countries. Take it Tanzania, Sweden, and all the other countries where they were. And they were still strong at that time. So if you allowed them to cascade into this country and probably take power, you would be risking. And I want to think those were the fears of the Bush War by then in 1995. When it came to 2005, you remember that around 2004-05, there were some political heads that ran out of this country and probably went, some others like this notable medical doctor who just passed on.
Dr. Chiinji.
Dr. Chiinji, the Kanokiza Besiges. Such people, there was a fear that if they went and probably acquired dual loyalty of another country and would come and probably destabilize this country. But then there was a debate as to whether that was in tandem with international civil and political rights as guaranteed under the UN Human Rights Charter and all the other charters on human rights and the Bill of Rights. And then that caused the amendment in the Constitution, like my land colleague here has stated, and the subsequent amendment into the Citizenship and Immigration Control Act in 2009. The question would be then, would it be because of dual citizenship that one loses loyalty to their country? I think there are two types of homesteads that you would have. There is a home by law, and then there is a home by nature. Home by nature is where you're born, which the Constitution actually gives you an outright guarantee that you'll always be a citizen until you pronounce that you are not one, or until the laws pronounce you that you are not one. Then homeland by law is when you apply, and probably by naturalization, or you apply after 21 years of settlement, permanent residence, then you apply and say you want to become a dual citizen of Uganda. For me, my thought, when you look at the Constitution, the Constitution is clear, like Judah stated, that if you want to be president of this country, you must be a citizen by birth. That one, no debate. When it comes to ministers and cabinet ministers, one, you must be qualified to be an MP, a member of parliament, but also a citizen of Uganda. Now, when it says a citizen of Uganda, it leaves you with other forms of citizenship.
No, but then it shouldn't have been included in the
and that is where I'm coming.
It's
That's
here in
the-
the fifth
and that's
you cannot be cabinet minister.
yes, and
or
that's where
other minister.
and that's where I'm coming. Now, when the Constitution says that you can be a minister if you have any forms of citizenship, then the Uganda Citizenship and Immigration Control Amendment Act comes and says that you cannot be a minister if you have dual citizenship. My colleague here will tell you that where there is a controversy or adversarial conflict between two laws, that is to say the Constitution and the Uganda Citizenship and Immigration Control Act, then Article 2 comes in supremacy of the Constitution. So for me, my argument would be that if the Constitution has said that a minister can be one, for you to qualify, one who is a member of parliament, but also a citizen of Uganda. So that means the Constitution has not pronounced itself on any form. So if you have the Immigration and Control Act, and it's coming in the 5th schedule, and it's listing and it's telling you that you cannot be a minister if you have dual citizenship, there is a conflict of two laws.
Is it?
Yes, there is the conflict of the Constitution. The Constitution is very clear. Then the Act is also coming to tell you that these people cannot be. But also the most important thing here would be, Anderson, citizenship by birth is your right. It cannot be taken away. But citizenship by probably a second citizenship, dual citizenship, where it's for social, economic, education, investment, comfort, that does not mean that you are no longer Ugandan. I would give an example. I've read very many articles about Muganga, the Vice Chancellor of Victoria University. He's born Ugandan, and there is no doubt on that. He's Ugandan. So when he goes to have his education in Canada, probably could have settled there for 5 to 10 years. It is plausible and it is believable that anyone that has gone for education would, in search for employment, probably even get documentations to acquire citizenship, Canadian citizenship. Does that mean that is not loyal to Uganda? I think not.
All right. There is a story actually online, and not to make this discussion specific about Dr. Muganga. There's a story online where it actually says Rwandan national Dr. Lawrence Muganga wins award in Canada. There's also another controversy there, whereby in Canada they identify him as a Rwandan national, and right here we know him as a Ugandan national.
But that's what that's what I started with. You're forgetting that 90% of Ugandans are Rwandese. Most of them. You're forgetting that. And you're also forgetting...
Rwandan national.
Yes, and you're also forgetting...
Rwandese of Ugandan descent, or something like that.
You're also forgetting that I started with the political history of Uganda, and I've told you that there were some Rwandese who came to Uganda and were recognized as Ugandans. I gave you an example of Fred Rijema. I gave you an example that he was actually a deputy minister of defense right before he went and fought for the liberation of Rwanda. The question would be, if you lose loyalty to your country of birth, do we have sufficient laws that can cap that? And that is when espionage comes in. But
I've had also stories here in the city where you have people who are holding national identity cards of two different countries, Rwanda and Uganda.
Yes.
And once they are going to Rwanda, they flash out the Rwandan national card. When they are entering Uganda, they flash the Ugandan national ID.
And you see, the law allows them, so long as the Citizenship and Immigration Control Board has granted them dual citizenship and gives them a certificate of dual citizenship, they can use it as they so wish. For example, we have had a debate here where footballers, Ugandan born, are playing for UK, are playing for US, and they choose where to play. Some of them have negated coming back to Uganda. Some of them have come and have played for Uganda Cranes and have gone. Before you reach a certain age for football, it's actually different. Before you reach a certain age, you can even change to another country and play for it. So it's not an offense for somebody to...
You can have employment.
Yeah.
Even if you have dual citizenship, you can have employment. But here specific, it's about those sensitive government departments.
My point would be, like it is in the US, you can be a minister with dual citizenship. in the US. My point would be, how much security vetting have we made on people that are seeking to be cabinet ministers?
Okay.
If there is a taint of their integrity, if there is a taint on their loyalty, if people have been investigated for offenses of espionage and espionage-related acts, probably you could say they would be vetted out. But where security has vetted them in and a list is submitted to the president that these are fit and proper to serve as ministers, for me, I think then the constitution would prevail, which states that for somebody to be a cabinet minister or a minister of the government of Uganda should qualify as a member of parliament and a citizen, and must be a citizen of Uganda.
All right, Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90. We're going to go for a quick break. It is on the possibility of Parliament sitting and resolving this matter by passing a resolution, but that would be seen in another way as political games because of the debate that has come. So what would be the best way forward in this kind of situation?
No, I still think they need to discuss how best to accommodate people, whether in the cabinet or to have a frank conversation about this. But before I get to that, I wanted to first say, I think what my colleague Tony is saying, it's not correct to say that the immigration, the Uganda Citizenship and Immigration Control Act offends the constitution because of putting a restriction on your citizens. You have to go back to the constitution. Article 15, clause 7 of the constitution specifically empowered the parliament to prescribe offices which your citizens are not permitted to hold. So parliament basically all that it did was to prescribe those offices. So Article 15,
respect the constitution.
Yes. So Article 15, clause 7 is the one that mandated parliament to prescribe offices which your citizens are not eligible to occupy. And therefore you cannot say that the prohibition, which is in section 23 of the Citizenship and Immigration Control Act, offends the constitution. It doesn't. It simply fulfills what is in the constitution in Article 15, clause 7. But that having been said, this is a fluid area, and that is why even the Act of Parliament left it to parliamentary resolution to keep determining from time to time what your citizens can do, what they cannot do. We can still have a conversation and say maybe having them in the cabinet is not necessarily a problem. What we cannot do is to ignore the letter and spirit of the existing law and pretend otherwise. But as it stands now, your citizens cannot serve in the cabinet. We want them to serve in the cabinet. Let's have the conversation. We can have the conversation. I don't think it's. I think it's healthy to have this debate. And the problems that we need to get rid of, where people may be clandestinely, which is common, clandestinely hold other citizenships that they don't disclose when they're in Uganda. I'm sure we have had ministers in the cabinet before who were dual citizens.
We had Dr. Malinga. He was a minister of health for quite some time, 2 terms.
Yeah.
He was an American citizen.
Yeah, he's not the only one. There have been
And
others.
before that, the law had not come into force.
Yes, but what we need to... No, actually, the law came into force in the year 2009. That's 17 years ago. He was already a minister. Yes. But of course, this is something you enforce when you are vetting anyway, at the level of appointing ministers, when you are vetting them. And probably there could be others and we don't know, because it is just that the curious case of Dr. Muganga is in the public domain because of who he is. He's a vice chancellor of a growing university. He's a bit outspoken. He had some trouble with the security a few years ago. So for him, there is so much about him in the public domain. But you never know if someone did a rigorous vetting. You may find the other people who have passports and we don't know. As you know, for example, anyone who was born in the United States is eligible for American citizenship, and many usually have it. So, but you see, you are not going to know. But if you were to sample this entire cabinet, you may find there are 2 or 3 people who are probably born in the United States and maybe quietly have their American passports, but they don't talk about it.
So what would be the way forward for that kind of situation? Does he denounce that? What does he do?
He would have to denounce. He would have to denounce the other citizenship. As to if someone loves Uganda so much, you say, okay, I'm denouncing the American one and staying with the Ugandan. But again, the truth of the matter is, denouncing citizenship does not remove your other citizenship generally, globally. I can choose to denounce my Ugandan citizenship today and say from today and onwards I will cease being a Ugandan.
And apply to have it back again.
Yes. And then later when I want it, I apply to get it back. Nobody is going to say the moment you denounce, you will never have it again. That's not the law.
So it's a very tough situation.
Denouncing citizenship is just a fiction. That's the reality.
Because at the end of the day, it's that issue is in your heart and in your mind, whatever you intend to do when you're in that office.
And there is, if you look at Ugandan law and indeed the laws of many other countries, there are very few countries which provide that if you denounce, then you'll never get back your citizenship. Because it simply doesn't make sense anyway. What I know that some countries have done, I think even Rwanda used to do that. I don't know if it's still the case. In Rwanda, if you apply for asylum in a foreign country, you automatically lose your Rwandese citizenship. Of course, that even violates international law standards, but that's beside the point. Then there are other countries like Eritrea, where if you are outside Eritrea, you still must be paying taxes to Eritrea. If you don't, they don't give you citizenship. So there are countries like that, but you see they're all problematic
situation
states,
depending
yes.
on how other countries handle it. Mr. Tumukunde, what do you think would be the way forward? Let's also hear your view.
You see, I want to agree with my land and senior colleague Jude when he says that there is no conflict between these two laws. But there will be a debate. There will be a big debate where the Constitution says that you qualify, but where the Act says they do not qualify. And it's the statutory principle of interpretation where there is a statute or an act of parliament cannot abridge, limit, or qualify or reduce on qualifications that are stated by the Constitution. That is a debate for another day. Jude is a constitutional lawyer. At least they will have to tussle that with the AG and see as to whether Lawrence Muganga can serve. But the most important thing here to look at, and which Parliament should be looking at, even in the spirit of amending the law, I don't want to state on radio that the amendment should be in favor of one person. No. Let us use this as a case study, that if you are a dual citizen and you have dual loyalty, do you then, because of the passport, do you lose the patriotism that you have for your country? Because I'm looking at someone who is Ugandan born, he goes to the US, he studies, then after studying, he comes back with his dual citizenship.
Probably having served even in the armed forces.
Even having served in the armed forces. Or let's take an example, Russia and Israel, where at least they must serve. Then he comes in Uganda, and he's a cabinet minister. The reason why...
And probably the children have remained in the other country.
Exactly.
In the United States or elsewhere.
I'm not certain of the Echodus who have married United States citizens and probably have... I want to state that they could be sharing citizenship with the US. The point would be, are they still patriotic to Uganda even when they're in SEC? Because when you're in SEC, you're almost a cabinet minister. You're a minister of that sort. But Dr. Rollins Muganga stands out because I think we know little about his citizenship and much about the rumors. So you have heard that some people are saying he's Rwandese citizen. Some people are saying is Canadian citizen. Some people are saying as of February 2026 is Ugandan citizen. So he has multiple citizenship. I really don't know before getting Ugandan citizenship whether he renounced one. I really don't know. I would want to confirm that. But the point here should be, if you're a dual citizen and you were born Ugandan, can you be given chance to serve?
What I remember about Dr. Muganga is one of the Rwandans, should I say Ugandans, who have been saying they belong to a group called Bavandimwe, who are indigenous Rwandese from Uganda.
Yes.
And that somehow sends that message that probably is not associated with Rwanda, Kigali.
Yes, he's not, and some of those people's parents were
And actually, he was born in Mukono, according to the documents we say.
Seta. He was born, so he's Ugandan. There is no doubt he's Ugandan. He could have gone to Canada at an early age, probably through either asylum or opportunities and whatever, and he got citizenship. Does it rule out the fact that he was born? So when he comes back to Uganda, because I would give you an example. If you were born here, I would give you an example of adopted children. They are born here. Some of them did not even have documentation before the amendment of the NERA Act. If they were taken, because at least now the law of registration of persons says 21 days after birth you must register. But before the coming into force of that law, people were born here. They would even take ages without even getting birth certificates and recognized by their council, city councils and hospitals. So if such a person went to Canada and studied and got citizenship, registered their citizenship, then he remembers, since he's back in Uganda like Dr. Muganga, a vice chancellor, then he remembers, oh, I am a born of Seta. When I die, I will be buried in Gwafu Seta. My parents are in Seta. So why don't I have to acquire a national ID? I think it is up to the vetting committee of the Board of Citizenship and Immigration Control Board to look out as to whether this person is fit for citizenship. And that is what the Bavandima have been saying, that some of them did not register outright from the very start, but they were born here in 1965. Their parents and grandparents were in Uganda. So they are Ugandans, the kinds of Gashumbas and all these people that were fronting the idea of registration. These are all Ugandans. We must agree that we must coexist with these people.
All right.
But also then, we should not forget that some of these people have settled in IDP camps, and the registration laws of refugees must take effect on some of these people that want. So if you tell me such and such was a refugee, then he went and enjoyed refugee benefits in Canada, and he came back, he has to prove that he was born Ugandan. And that is why he said there is homestead by law and homestead by nature. And if he proves homestead by nature, then he can be.
All right. Yes. I think we will have to wait for the final report of the Appointments Committee of Parliament, which will be vetting people who are in that category tomorrow, to see what finally they would advise the president of this particular matter. Not so.
Yes.
But as we speak now, until the law is amended or until they denounce, it's most likely they will not end up in cabinet.
It would be another point. Jude would tell you whether the appointments board would understand the provisions that Jude is talking about.
Let me probably tell you something that I've heard from people. That some people say that, you know, President Museveni can be very tricky. He can give you with one hand and take away with another. You remember what happened to Seya? Haji Sebagala?
Yes, I want.
Do you think it could be in the mix? After that intense, intense lobby by the Bavandime.
I want to believe the president knows how to cook Ugandans. So some mistakes are not really mistakes before the president of this country. He could leave you to the vetting committee, and if they trust me, if they passed, you would see people. Oh, Mabirizi is in jail, but people would have started with constitutional petitions
already
and would be approaching Judy to sue the Attorney General for
interpretation. The East African Community Court of Justice.
Yeah, but you
very
see,
quickly before we hear from the listener.
But you see, I think there are two things. Of course, the president can also make a mistake, or he may not have adequate information. Like we have seen how he did the chief whip issue. Probably someone had not reminded him that in the rules of procedure, chief whip must be an elected member of parliament.
Sure.
And twice human, it can happen.
All right. Straight from
I don't think it's the first time anyway that such there could have been an oversight. But also, to be fair, I think it's when someone has citizenship of another country but is based in another and is active for a long time, it's easy to think that maybe he forfeited the other citizenship or he no longer cares about it. I can see a mindset in which the president would say, but this young man seems hardworking. I can see Dr. Muganga has been a regular writer in New Vision. Maybe he was also preparing himself in the last 2 years. So it can go either way. But like I said, for me, the legalities are quite obvious. But also the funny thing is the legalities have a framework that they can take advantage of. If they are so desperate to have him, but I don't think there should be any desperation as such. It's simply that there needs to be a clear understanding of the framework and about Schedule 5. Is it wise? Is it not wise? Did the parliament think through? When you see, most of them I think are well thought through.
All right.
But maybe there can also be those requirements that if you're a dual citizen, first of all, you should always declare it, and then it should be publicly known. So if you have a conflict, should a conflict of interest ever arise, it's dealt with. There's a way to deal with it.
All right.
So in line with the Protection and Sovereignty Act, would he first be the first one to register?
No, you see,
as an agent of a foreigner.
No. Having citizenship of another country doesn't automatically make you an agent of a foreigner. It's you see that whole concept of it has something to do with are you a lobbyist? Can you say Muganga is a lobbyist for the Canadian government? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
Not even possible, really.
He has given his heart and mind.
But what we need to look at, what we need to be careful about is the framework which Parliament gave, the framework in the Constitution.
Right.
Are we following it or not? Because you see, this is a small issue in the wider scheme of things. It's a very small issue, but it speaks to the seriousness with which the executive must regard the Constitution and the laws passed by Parliament. For me, that's a broader issue.
But the Parliament itself, which enacted
the details about individuals are not as important as the broader principle that is at play. And for me, it is the principle that we should engage with, and not personalities.
All right. Let's now